Good afternoon, and thank you so much for finding time to being with me this afternoon. The show is Diaspora Dispatches, where I get to bring you the latest news from across the continent of Africa. My name is Miriam Goto, and as usual, it is a pleasure to have you on board. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and watching us from. We start with some news from Burkina Faso. And the new government on Wednesday declared its top priority will be to secure our nation's territory after the latest coup to rock the jihadist-torn Sahel state. A UN envoy warned in New York that around 4.9 million, or a fifth of the population, need urgent aid in Burkina Faso, as many mothers were forced to feed their children with leaves and salt. Prime Minister Apollinaire Kelem Di Tembela outlined the nation's priority at the first cabinet meeting chaired by Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who seized power this month. Named premier on Friday, the 64-year-old lawyer heads and 23-member government, including 3 military officers and 5 women, to lead the country until its promised return to civilian rule. On the key positions in the cabinet unveiled late Tuesday, Colonel Kassoum Coulibaly was appointed Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, a key post in a country ravaged by jihadist violence. The 2 other officers are Colonel Bukare Zongrana, who oversees territorial administration, decentralization and security, and Colonel Augustin Kabore for the environment. It's a government full of military leaders there. And still staying with West Africa, the first African president to visit Kiev since the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, President Sissoko Embalo of Guinea-Bissau met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a day after a visit to Russia, where he met also President Vladimir Putin. Embalo emphasized that Guinea-Bissau remains an unwavering partner for Russia and Ukraine. The current president of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, Mr. Embalo, said Africa carries peace and wants to bring together the 2 brotherly countries. Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, said that as of yesterday, Russia is blocking 170 ships with grain for Africa and Asian countries. Mr. Embalo also assured that he would ask the Russian president to release the more than 156 ships blocked near the Bosporus Strait, while Ukraine accuses Russia of deliberately delaying this ship intended for the transport of cereals by prolonging inspections carried out in accordance with an agreement reached on these deliveries, which are crucial for many countries in Africa and Asia. We go to Ethiopia. Rights groups Amnesty International has called for a probe into abuses in the Ethiopian Tigray conflict, saying every party involved in the war in northern Tigray has committed crimes against humanity. An Amnesty International specialist on Ethiopia and Eritrea told a press conference in Nairobi on Wednesday the first formal peace talks between the warring sides in the brutal 2-year conflict in Ethiopia's Tigray region entered day 2 in South Africa on Wednesday. Led by the African Union, the negotiations in Pretoria follow a surge in fierce fighting in recent weeks that has alarmed the international community and triggered fears of civilians caught in the crossfire. The talks are being held at South Africa's Foreign Affairs Ministry headquarters. AU, Horn of Africa envoy and Nigerian former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who is the talks chief facilitator, was filmed and photographed by AFP journalists entering the venue on Wednesday morning. Kenya's former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is part of the mediating team, was also seen going into the building. So was South Africa's ex-Vice President Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka. U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa Mike Hermer also participating in the talks. The Pretoria Dialogue, the first publicly announced talks between the rivals, opened on Monday and is due to run until Sunday, according to the South African presidency. But so far, there has been a media blackout, with journalists kept outside the venue's perimeter fence, and no updates are being issued. Let's just hope things are going well. They're going well in there. And we head over to Burundi. Burundi's foreign minister officially declared that the border between the East African country and Rwanda has been reopened. On October 25th, Minister Alberto Shingiro confirmed in a press conference the border reopening with Rwanda. He also indicated that Burundi maintained its position of calling on Kigali to return coup plotters it alleges fled there after trying to overthrow President Pierre Nkurunziza in 2015. The border between Burundi and Rwanda had been closed for almost 6 years, first amid political tensions and then by COVID-19 pandemic. Rwanda, for its part, reopened its border with Burundi several months ago. The border reopening comes after President Ruto of Kenya urged his East African community partner states to knock off barriers that impede trade across the bloc. We head over to South Sudan. The dismissal of South Sudan's Vice President Riek Machar from his party, the ruling Sudan People's Liberation Movement, SPLM, continues to generate reactions. The SPLM's Secretary for Political Affairs, Mobilization and Organization, Cole Atem, is the latest to respond to the dismissal. Machar, along with Pagum Amum, formerly senior members of the party, were dismissed after both established breakaway parties, the SPLM-IO and the real SPLM, respectively. The world's youngest nation was lurched from crisis since its proclaimed independence from Sudan in July 2011 and is held together by a fragile unity government between historic foes President Salva Kiir and Machar, highlighting the continued friction between the two men. A meeting chaired by Kiir last week ousted Machar from the governing South Sudan's Liberation Movement, SPLM. Mr. Machar on Monday rejected the decision to strip both him and SPLM Secretary General Pagan Amum of party membership as well as leadership roles. And then we move to, to Ghana. And lawmakers from Ghana's governing party have suspended their push for Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta to be removed from office until a relief package is negotiated with the International Monetary Fund, IMF. Ghana is facing its worst economic crisis in years. Its currency has lost 52% of its value against the US dollar since the beginning of the year, and annual inflation has climbed to 37%. In a statement, the ruling New Patriotic Party said President Nana Akufo-Addo told them their demands will be acted upon after the 2023 budget reading and culmination of ongoing IMF support talks. A section of legislators had on Tuesday demanded the immediate sacking of the finance minister and his deputy over the state of the economy and the depreciating cedi, the local currency. The minister is currently negotiating a $3 billion bailout fund from the International Monetary Fund. And then we go back to South Africa. South Africa has appeared to downplay a warning by the U.S. Embassy of a possible threat of terrorist attack over the weekend in the commercial hub in Johannesburg. The U.S. Embassy on Wednesday advised its staff to avoid crowds of people and other large public gatherings in the greater Sandton area of Johannesburg. In a response, South African presidency noted the U.S. terror alert was part of the U.S. government's standard communication to its citizens. The presidency said it was the responsibility of the South African security forces to ensure security and safety for all the people. In the country, it said law enforcement agencies were monitoring any threats to the citizens and the nation, and should the need arise, South African government will be the first to inform the public about any imminent threat. And that is according from a statement from the presidency. A minister in the presidency was quoted by local media on Wednesday as saying that the alarm has been going on, but up to this point, it is not backed up by any evidence. And then we end our bulletin by going back to Ethiopia as peace talks aimed at ending Ethiopia's civil war continue for a third day in South Africa. Heavy fighting is reported to be taking place on several fronts in northern Tigray region. A senior military commander with the Tigray forces told the BBC that the clashes near the town of Adwa involved heavy artillery and tanks. Correspondents say the outcome of the fighting there could determine who controls the two roads leading to Mekelle, that is the capital of Tigray. There have also been reports of clashes involving forces from neighboring Eritrea near the border with the Afar region. The Ethiopian military and its Eritrean allies recently took control of major major towns in Tigray, including Shire, Aksum, and Adwa. That is the latest news from the continent this afternoon. Of course, the news from Ethiopia, very troubling. Right now, the mediation talks are continuing, and I think from what we've been looking at and talking about over this story, it's just I wonder how these peace talks are going, because you can't purport to be sitting on a table to discuss peace and how to find a solution while you're actively participating in a war. How does that even make sense? How is this mediation supposed to really be effective? Like, what are we doing? Is the Ethiopian government, because I know the last time it said, as much as it is committed to this mediation process, but it will continue with its bombardment of the Tigray region, I think together with its bombardment partner, Isaias Afwerki, the president of Eritrea. And so this has been continuing. So you wonder if this is what is happening. You're fighting each other. The killings are continuing. The human suffering is continuing. The blockade of the aid that is needed in that region is continuing. And yet they're sitting down on the negotiating table to negotiate what? What kind of peace are we looking for? I think for this to be successful, and I'm not a professional mediator, not yet, but there has to be a willingness from both sides. And I know for Tigray forces, they say they're willing to accept a cessation of hostilities. They're willing to put their arms down, and they're willing to come to the negotiating table with clean hands, whatever that means. Okay, because according to the report I was just reading here from the Amnesty International, both sides have been accused of committing serious atrocities and human rights abuses. The Ethiopian forces, the Tigrayan forces, and also Eritrean forces. There's been there evidence to that, there evidence to that. And as we were having this conversation here the other day, it is important to reiterate that access to that area is impossible. The government has put a blockade. No media is even allowed to go in there and cover what is happening. So even the figures that we are receiving for the people who were affected, the people who have died since the civil war started, it could go upwards. All right. So whatever they give is just a fraction of what could really be happening. So this is the state of what is happening. So the talks have started in South Africa, and they started on Monday. I guess today is the fourth day, I believe, and our former president Uhuru Kenyatta, together with the former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, have been leading these talks. And of course, Olusegun Obasanjo is the chief facilitator. I remember he was involved. He was picked by AU a few months ago to mediate on this process, and nothing was giving. I never heard any report from Obasanjo. I guess he couldn't do it. So they had to review and how to bring in other people into that mediation panel or people or whatever it is, the committee, something. Anyway, that have been selected by AU to do that. So President Kenyatta was involved. Former president of Kenya was chosen. He was proposed to do that, and I think it's important because people are wondering why is it President Kenyatta that he's the one that perhaps the current president proposed. It could be AU that even maybe proposed, because we know that he was actively involved in his own way to try to mediate throughout this process. We saw him meeting Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed several times while he was still the president, and so he's really been trying, to try and bring some peace and try to bring the warring, sides together. So I think that's why him being there feels right, because he has some history already of wanting to see peace in that part, and he has been involved when he was president. So I think it's only right that he would still be there and continue. Same case with the Democratic Republic of Congo. We've seen how he reached out and how, he tried to mediate between the DIA and Rwanda. We know the problem up there. with the Democratic Republic of Congo accusing Rwanda of supporting the deadly M23 rebels who are fighting the government in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But today we're not talking about that, so I'll just digress. And the mediation is going. But I wonder how this mediation is going. And of course, another person that is has been included in that mediation team is former South Africa's Vice President Phumzile Mlambo. So he's also part of that. And so he's mediating, and other people, of course, from across the continent. We can only wish that, hope that this works out. But I don't see the will. I don't see the will at all to really want a peaceful Ethiopia, to forge a path of peace. You can say that you're sitting down and mediate on finding peace while you're actively still fighting. Cessation of hostilities would have been the first step. So maybe that is what they're still talking about, because we've not heard much. And as I was reading through the story you heard, even the media have not been allowed into mediation room. Nobody's giving a press conference, which I think sometimes is okay. But also I think this is a very important news story, not just for Africa, but for the world. We want to know what is the progress. Today is day 4. They started on Monday. What's going on? What is the progress? Is there a stalemate? Do we have some strong hardliners there? What is the government's position? Did the government send a proper high-level people to represent them in these talks? Because remember, there was a problem in Burundi. Remember, after the coup in 2015. The attempted coup in 2015. I think I've read through it in one of the stories here. Perhaps I'll look at it now that Burundi has agreed to open its border with Rwanda. Rwanda seems to be in the middle of a lot of mess in its African community. But I choose to digress for right now. But anyway, in 2015, so was it SADC? No, I think. And was it SADC or IGAD? All right, so Tanzania was picked to mediate through the warring sides in Burundi, and former president, now late, Benjamin Mkapa, was the one who was heading that mediation process. So every now and then, Burundian president would send the junior people from his government to attend this process and these meetings, and it appeared to be very disrespectful. This is a whole former president of a country, Benjamin Mkapa. We all know him of Tanzania. And Nkurunziza at that time was the president. He did not care. So he looked for the most junior people in his leadership or his cabinet or something, or in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to send them to attend this mediation process. So that really went ahead to show Burundi's lack of commitment and all this in the process, and that did not sit well. I think Benjamin Mkapa was really frustrated, so he just left. He just gave up on all that, and I don't know what that happened. I don't know whatever happened. Oh yeah, because Burundi had also applied to join SADC. No, it's not in SADC yet, but I think that was through IGAD. But Burundi had applied to join SADC at that time. And I think that request was rejected because of several other factors, which I'll not get into this afternoon. So what I'm saying all that to say that there has to be a will, and the government of Ethiopia must show the commitment. So I hope they did send the right people in this process, and also the Tigrayan side and other stakeholders. When we were having this conversation, was it on Monday? I think one of the panelists from Ethiopia, I think from the Oromo region, they have their own issues with the government, so they feel they need to be represented. The Mara people needs to be represented, and others. So everybody needs to be on the table so that they're able to solve this problem. As we all know, Ethiopia is fighting within itself, and that is a tragedy. So you don't even know. So we are eagerly waiting. I think the talks will go up to Sunday, but we're eagerly waiting to hear the results of these talks and see if at all progress is being made. We're just hoping, but as long as these gunfires continue, I don't know what this progress is supposed to look like, and I don't know if we are looking at anything different but the gunfire continues according to credible reports. The gunfire continues there in the Tigray region. They're relentless. Ethiopia is still fighting Eritrea is still helping the fight from the other side, and Ethiopia government. And so this is not a fertile ground for any peace negotiations to take place. Cessation of hostilities, we've said here before, and I repeat again, it's very important. That shows a willingness to really want to find a lasting peace. But we keep fighting on one hand and sitting on the other hand talking about peace. Oxymoronic. Tell me how that makes sense. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed does not. And if you really truly, because I think at this point, and I'm not speaking for them, I'm assuming, Tigrayans the TPLF had said it's willing to put down the weapons. It's really open. I think they're exhausted. So they're open and they're eager to have these peace talks, and they're willing to put down their weapons. And so I guess now, if they're being fought, then they have to fight back. So now everybody is just fighting. We're not helping the situation. The arms and the silencing of the guns must happen for these peace talks to really go on and to be successful, so that it does not look like a joke. This is a serious matter. Thousands of people have lost their lives. So many people have been uprooted from their homes, and now living in refugee camps over very senseless civil conflict that probably a mediation and a coming together would have solved. You're the same people. You're the same people in the same country. And I've not heard these other regions that are dissatisfied. I've not heard them calling for secession or anything like that. So they still believe this is their country, and perhaps if everybody could come to the table with, well, they don't have clean hands, so that would be too much to ask at this point, but just an openness and a willingness to listen to each other, perhaps Ethiopia can find a solution within itself. As much as the mediation will take place, President Kenyatta will come back here. The other Olusegun Obasanjo will perhaps go back and sort other crises in ECOWAS, in West African state. They're always having something there for him to do. And then what? So, AU is pushing, UN is pushing, and we all understand how important this is. This can't be successful if the main players don't see the need to have this peace. There has to be a willingness. And that has been the problem with South Sudan. And now we see other things are happening that makes me very nervous. The developments on the party and all that. So there has to be a willingness for that to be achieved, for a peace in the coming days to be achieved, and for Ethiopia to go back to a path of a peaceful coexistence within itself. There has to be a willingness from the government side. There has to be a willingness from the TPLF side and other stakeholders, and these outside external forces who are funding this war, I believe they are. And Eritrea also has to go back to their country. The army must go back, to Eritrea, because this is ridiculous. It shouldn't be like this. And other foreign interference also have to be looked out and see who is this that is funding the TPLF. There has been accusations that they're being funded. Who is this, that is fueling this war by continuing to fund this warring side? So it's a lot to unpack. So I'm really eager to see what will happen after these talks. I think on Sunday, that is perhaps when they'll be able to give a statement and just tell the rest of the world what they have been talking about and the progress that they've been able to make. I'm just crossing my fingers, because you know what, it can be very interesting in these situations, and people who come there are hardliners who live very comfortably, and sometimes even their families are not in those countries, so they really don't care that the rest of you are suffering. That is the most unfortunate part in any war in a country. It is the people who have nothing to do with the war that get to suffer, while the rest of everybody else continue to do whatever it is they're doing. Okay, now that I talked about South Sudan and Burundi, let's start with the story from Burundi, where the Foreign Affairs Minister has officially declared that they have opened the border between Burundi and Rwanda. Like I said, Rwanda has been in a mix of a lot of chaos that are happening in some of these countries in East Africa. The Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi has been consistent in accusing Rwanda of meddling and also fueling the conflict that is ongoing in North Kivu, the northern part of the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And that is because Rwanda has been accused to be equipping, supplying, and funding the activities of the deadly rebel group, the M23. I think I once went into the details of all that, so today I'll not give you the background information. And Rwanda, on its part, has consistently refused to take responsibility. Now, the M23 is made up of Tutsis, and then the DR government also formed its own rebel group, FDLR, which is majority Hutus. So to counter the M23, so they've been fighting, and of course there are about 120 militant groups in that part of the Democratic of Congo. So there has been a bad blood, and DRC has stood its ground, and Rwanda also has stood its ground. Now, Rwanda also had a problem with Burundi. And before we even get to the problem between Rwanda and Burundi and the border, Rwanda had a problem with Uganda. And Uganda was accusing Rwanda of harboring some people who were plotting. Rwanda was accusing Uganda of harboring some dissidents and part of the people who participated in the genocide and all that, of coup plotters against President Paul Kagame. And Uganda also had its own accusations, so it was a counter-accusation. So because of that, the border was closed some years back, and it stayed so for over 2 years. And President Uhuru Kenyatta really did try to do a lot of mediation, was not very successful until there was some mediations done in Angola. President Lourenço tried, and finally, Mhonzi traveled to Rwanda. The president spoiled grown child, traveled to Rwanda, I think that is what he is, traveled to Rwanda, and they were able to somehow get a truce. So the border, I think, is open right now. So the border with Rwanda and Uganda is open, but they had a similar problem. And now the border with Rwanda and Burundi has been opened now. See, this Rwanda is interesting. Anyway, so I guess that is a good thing. That is really a good thing. And the reason why that border was closed is because Burundi had accused Rwanda of participating, and Burundi maintained its position of calling on Kigali to return coup plotters it alleged fled. So apparently the people who had plotted the coup, the attempted coup in 2015, remember there was attempted coup when President then Pierre Nkurunziza decided he was going to have a constitutional coup, which he really did, to run for an illegal third term, which he did. So that nearly plunged that country into another civil war after just regaining its footing. There has been a lot of coups in Burundi. I'll take my time one day, I'll take you through it so that you're able to better understand why Burundi sits where it is today, and why it is one of the poorest countries in the continent, and what is really going on in there. But there has been several coups, and also they have a problem with ethnic balkanization, the same problem that brought the genocide in Rwanda. They're also having similar problems there. And so the people who plotted the coup, apparently according to Burundi, ran into Rwanda. And they've been demanding for President Paul Kagame to hand these people back to Burundi. And of course, Paul Kagame asks, what people? I don't know what you're talking about, I'm assuming. But he said no, there are no coup plotters there in Rwanda. But anyway, I think this is a good move, because this was hampering a lot of activities in and around the East African communities. It's really a small community, about 7 countries right now with the coming in of the Democratic Republic of Congo, but a lot of chaos, really, a lot of chaos. So anyway, let's go back to South Sudan and the dismissal of South Sudan's President Riek Machar from his party, the ruling Sudan Liberation Movement, SPLM, continues to generate. So Machar, along with Pagan Amum, formerly senior members of the party, were dismissed after both established breakaway parties, the SPLM-IO and the real SPLM. So it has caused a bit of disquiet. But if Machar and Amum already left and they formed their own parties, why are they still in the register of SPLM? He went and formed the SPLM in opposition. The other one formed the real SPLM. So I think it is in order to strike them out of SPLM's parties register. I think it's only in order. You can't be in two parties. But what really caught me, and yesterday I think I did this story and I did not get into it. I think we were looking at the court ruling from Nigeria on the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, and that ruling by the High Court in Ethiopia. But so I did not really get time to go through, because I heard the similar news here yesterday about Riek Machar being ousted from the ruling party. And what really struck me, they're busy sitting down and counting the number of people who are registered with their parties. They're busy sitting down and worrying about their position in these parties and all this. Well, the most important things they're supposed to be concentrating on, you don't even hear them talking about. South Sudan's leaders' priorities, they're always upside down. How do you sit down and boast of having 3-point, I don't know what, members registered to your party? These people languishing in refugee camps. You should be ashamed of yourself. And then, now that you have 3.5 million people registered in your party, what does that mean? How does that translate to better lives to the people of South Sudan? How does that help the current condition in the country? How does that ease the lives of the people in South Sudan? That's what I want to know. So until you're able to go back to the revitalized peace agreement of 2018 and work on implementing, it has about 6 sections, and work on implementing these things, the agendas in there, we are still not making progress. So I know the Unified Forces graduated. What else have you been doing? It's supposed to be a work in progress, okay? And these unnecessary wrangles and party positions and all that, the people of South Sudan don't really care. The people of South Sudan want good security. The people of South Sudan want food. The people of South Sudan want proper health care. They want water and things that matter to them as the citizens of that country. This party politics, they don't care. This party politics brought South Sudan to where it is today. And the leaders are so concerned over the politics, as opposed to doing right by its people. So it's just misplaced priorities. So Machar was moved from the party. I think it's in order. You can't be in SPLM and be in SPLM-IO. You already left. You already left the SPLM. You went and formed your own party. So why are you mad? Why are these people making noise? You can't have your cake and eat it. You have to choose, Should have stayed in SPLM and fought it out in there like you guys did. You went and you formed your own party, SPLM-IO, and Amum also formed a real SPLM. I don't know why they're complaining about this, because these two left and formed their own parties. So now that they've been struck from the SPLM register, now that is a crisis. With the flooding that is ongoing, with the communal fighting that is ongoing, where are your priorities? The leaders of South Sudan, this is not the time. Plus, why do we care that you have set X amount of registered people in your party, while even you can't have an election right now? You keep postponing these elections. I know you postponed them to the end of 2024 December. I can almost guarantee you that will not even happen unless I don't know what else happens, because you are so committed to maintaining the status quo because it benefits you as leaders in South Sudan that I don't see any meaningful commitment to change anything as things stand right now. And I could be wrong. I could be wrong. So Kiir and Machar, who are on the same side in the push for independence from Khartoum, but ethnic and political rivalries drove them apart. I think we can all remember that. The SPLM was founded as the political wing of the South Sudan's Liberation Army, which led the fight for South Sudan's independence, but it splintered into different factions after the civil war erupted in December 2018. The tensions between Kiir and Machar has often descended into deadly violence despite numerous pledges to silence the guns. In April, they agreed on the creation of a unified armed forces